hear every word so that I am precise. And I really regret that you are in the rain, frankly. First of all, let me say that my obligation to open these talks on behalf of the Secretary General in January came from a resolution, Security Council resolution. Well, they instructed me to start the talks. We were ready. The agenda has been also ready, 2254. I made it clear at the Security Council on behalf of the Secretary General and in public speeches that the talks would not be meaningful unless they were also accompanied by immediate, tangible benefits for the Syrian people. We have said it many times. This is why I've been asking, and I've been asking even before issuing the invitations, that there is an immediate implementation of humanitarian initiatives, even before the talk starts. I was told and reassured that they were going to take place during the talks. Well, I've been hearing from the government that they have some procedural issues before talking about the humanitarian side. I've been hearing from the opposition that they are urgently feeling the need for the Syrian people. Based on that, I have concluded, frankly, that after the first week of preparatory talks, and there are talks, and the talks have started. You can call them as you want, but they were talks. That there is more work to be done. Not only by us, we have done our part, but by the stakeholders who have been telling us, the countries, go and start this initiative, while in fact they, the Security Council and the ISSG, are now expected to address some of the issues which have been pending. One in particular, what is the talks going to make as a difference for the Syrian people? From the first day, I've indicated that I'm not prepared to hold talks for the sake of talks, and the Secretary General has said the same. The UN cannot allow simply procedural matters to actually become more important than actually the result for the humanitarian situation of the Syrian people who have been waiting for us to deliver, this time not a conference, but something concrete for them. I've therefore taken this decision to bring a temporary pause. Temporary pause. This is not the end, and it's not the failure of the talks. Why? They came and they stayed. Not only, but both sides insisted on the fact that they are interested in having the political process started. 3, I've already fixed a date for the next talks, 25th of February. 4, I find that at this stage it's very important to give an opportunity to those who have been insisting that the talks need to take place, that they also address the issues which have been pending and unresolved. And therefore I've been asking and will be asking for the ISSG to convene as soon as possible, hopefully already in Munich, the Security Council to meet, and we reconvene in Geneva again on the 25th of February. The whole matter is, again, are we here to have another Geneva conference without any result for the Syrian people, or are we serious about what we have been saying? That while we are having a conference talking about the future and political future of Syria and the transition and the new constitution and new elections, the Syrian people will see, and they expect me and expect all of us to produce something while we are talking. Since I have not seen that, I have to be honest and say with myself, it's time now to have a pause, only a pause, and give a time for this to happen. Thank you very much.
You said nothing, Special Envoy. You said nothing about the military. You said nothing about the military escalation by the Syrian government and the Russian bombardment. Haven't they basically bombed your talks?
I am not referring to military activities. I'm saying to the impossibility through military activities and other reasons for the fact that the humanitarian signals which are meant to be sent to the Syrian people, for instance, lifting of the sieges, for instance, the access for all the places which are at the moment unreachable, should be seen.
But you asked for a ceasefire and there was an
What are your
escalation.
feelings at
Well,
this moment? Are you disappointed? Are you frustrated? What are you going to do now?
Okay, first of all about my feelings. Well, I spoke with the Secretary General, and I'm going probably tomorrow to London to explain and to make sure that the conference which is taking place in London will realize that what they are doing is very important, because if there is a preparation for the day after and for the refugees and for the Syrian people, it will be an additional incentive for actually having the reconvening of the talks on the 25th successful. I'm not frustrated, I'm not disappointed. I have been long enough with the UN to know that when you have a 5 years war and have had so many difficult moments, you have to be determined but also realistic. And when you see things go in a certain direction, we are the convener, we manage the conference, we decide when the conference is producing results or not. And if they don't produce results, we need to go deeper. That's what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you get a guarantee from the both sides?
Well, that was UN Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura addressing the press there, as the talks have not come to an end, but they are on a temporary pause. Well, let's cross now to Simon McGregor-Wood, who's just outside those talks, was listening in. So, Simon, we're at a pause. They haven't collapsed, we've paused. Did you buy his words?
Well, okay. Those were his words. I think he was honour bound to try and put a brave face on it. It appears that what we've all been suspecting all along, that the conditions on the ground, the continued fighting, the inability of the opposition to see any concrete humanitarian gestures. I'll take you back to last Friday when they first arrived here, saying we're only here unless we get immediate signs of an improvement on the ground in terms of these humanitarian issues. De Mistura, they're clearly saying, well, it just hasn't happened. Of course, he's trying to suggest that it is a temporary cessation of the talks process. We've been told by diplomats on the fringes of this meeting that the London conference will now be especially important. Mr. de Mistura said that he's going to go and brief some of the key donors on what's been happening here. And then I think we also need to take a very close look at the Munich Security Conference. That's an annual get-together of the great and the good. That takes place next weekend in Munich. And we know that John Kerry and Sergei Lavrov will both be there. And I think all eyes will be on them to see if they can come to some sort of agreement to rein in the Syrian government in its most recent offensive, to try and create the groundwork, an improvement on the ground, so that the opposition can be lured back into this process, according to Mr. Mistura, again coming back to Geneva on the 25th of February.
Well, Simon, I was taken by the fact that he kept mentioning these stakeholders, and he was asked a question by a member of the press there as to whether these talks had been bombed out of existence. He's talking about the Russians and the increased activity by the Russian Air Force in Syria, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and there have been rumblings all along the past few days as this process has unfolded about the Russians, accusations from some unnamed diplomats talking to us saying that they've been playing a double game, co-sponsoring the UN Security Council resolution that brought about this session, 2254, the roadmap to peace in Syria, while at the same time, just as these talks are getting underway, co-sponsoring this vicious new offensive by the Syrian government, apparently targeting the city of Aleppo and rebel strongholds around it. There need to be some key conversations, I would suggest, between the people who are sponsoring this process and with the Russian government to try and work out what exactly they are trying to achieve here. A cynic might suggest that by the time the Munich conference comes and goes, and by the time February the 25th comes, it might be that Aleppo has fallen. It might be that then, hey presto, we find the Syrian government and their Russian allies more willing to talk, more willing to effect change on the ground in terms of the humanitarian situation. But we will have to see. There will be a lot of frenetic diplomacy between now and the end of February to get this process back on track.
Well, as you mentioned, Simon, events on the ground are changing day by day. Now, these talks, as we can all remember, were in for 6 months. So perhaps the fact that they're on pause till February the 25th won't be so surprising. But interesting to hear de Mistura talk about the fact that he was not frustrated or disappointed, but determined and realistic. I mean, this is a long 5-year bloody war. This is a long process. Perhaps we shouldn't be so surprised that the talks have had a hiccup so early on.
Well, you might remember when he announced the launch of this process, he warned the press, he warned us that this would be a process fraught with difficulty, and he said there would be flare-ups and there would be walkouts depending on what happened on the ground. He warned us that that would happen. He is a consummate diplomat. It is his job to put a brave face on the process that he is in charge of running, but he, I think, secretly must be bitterly disappointed that the talks, the initial phase of the talks, preparatory or whatever you want to call them, didn't last a bit longer. Let's not forget that we have not yet had a day in this process where he has seen both the Syrian government and the opposition delegations in his building at the UN on the same day. That's kind of difficult to spin positively. I also understand that during the course of today, Wednesday, when he was expecting the opposition to come and see him at the UN headquarters, he was, shall we say, angry to have to come and see them here. He's the host, he's driving this process, and I think he felt affronted that he had to come and try and cajole the opposition into sticking with the process, which clearly, for the time being at least, he has failed to do.
Well, Simon, for now in Geneva, thank you very much.